Toxic people don't fear loud strength. They fear something far more dangerous, silence that cannot be controlled. The Stoics understood something most people never learn. You don't defeat toxic people by arguing. You don't escape them by explaining yourself. You dismantle them by removing the reward they feed on. Attention, reaction, emotional access. When you stop giving those away, toxic people don't get angry. They get uneasy because silence forces them to face something terrifying. Their own powerlessness. When you stop reacting, when your face stays calm, when your decisions don't need approval, they feel their influence shrinking. And influence is the only currency they understand. Today, I'll show you 7 silent behaviors. No confrontation, no aggression, no drama. Just quiet discipline that makes toxic people step back. Not because you're loud, but because you are no longer available to be controlled. Stay with me. This is Stoic power most people never master. Part 1, why toxic people don't fear anger. They fear control. You don't defeat toxic people by being louder. You don't win by proving you are right. You don't even win by exposing them. Because toxic people are not afraid of confrontation. They are built for it. What they fear is something far more dangerous. Control. Real control. Not over them, but over yourself. Pause with me for a second. Take a slow breath in through your nose and say it quietly in your mind. Control beats chaos. Say it again. Control beats chaos. Toxic people feed on emotional leakage, anger, defensiveness, urgency, explanation. Neuroscience shows that when someone provokes an emotional reaction, your prefrontal cortex goes offline for several seconds while the amygdala takes over. That window is where manipulation happens. Studies in behavioral psychology estimate that emotionally reactive people are up to 40% more likely to comply with unreasonable demands under social pressure. Toxic people don't consciously calculate this. They feel it. They sense when you are off balance. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by people like this. Generals who flattered him, senators who plotted behind calm faces, relatives who demanded access to his authority. And yet in his private writings, he never spoke about defeating enemies. He spoke about governing himself. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not philosophy for comfort. It is philosophy for survival. Imagine Marcus walking the palace corridors at night. No crowd, no applause, only oil lamps and silence. He understood something modern people forget. Anger feels powerful, but it hands control away. The moment you react, you enter the other person's frame, and the frame always belongs to the manipulator. Here is the first silent behavior that makes toxic people uneasy. You do not react on time, not delayed as a trick, delayed as a rule. When someone provokes you, their nervous system expects immediacy, a reply, a defense, a justification. Silence breaks prediction, and unpredictability breaks leverage. Pause here. Breathe once more. If someone has ever said something sharp and watched your face closely, they were checking for control. When you don't give it, their certainty collapses. This is why Marcus trained himself to slow the moment. He wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Being unlike them means refusing speed. Toxic people rush because urgency is their weapon. When you slow down, you disarm them without lifting a finger. Think of a workplace example. A colleague sends a passive-aggressive message late at night. The expectation is tension by morning. But you read it. You close the app. You sleep. You respond calmly the next day with facts only. No apology, no emotional explanation. Research on workplace power dynamics shows that delayed neutral responses increase perceived authority more than immediate emotional ones, even when the content is identical. Control changes how you are perceived. Say it with me. Calm is authority. Again, calm is authority. Marcus never confused restraint with weakness. He understood restraint is strength under command. Another moment. Imagine a family member who pushes buttons you have had since childhood. They know your old patterns. They know what makes you snap. When you don't, the script fails. And people who rely on scripts panic when the lines disappear. This is why anger does not scare toxic people. Anger confirms they still control your reactions. Control is when you can feel anger rise and choose not to release it. That choice is power. Let me ground this with numbers. Emotional regulation training has been shown to reduce interpersonal conflict by up to 30% in high-stress environments. Not because others change, but because reactions stop feeding the loop. Toxic people need loops. You end the loop, you end the game. Here is a simple practice. For the next 7 days when provoked, count 5 slow breaths before responding. Not to suppress emotion, but to let the mind return. Marcus practiced this internally. You practice it physically. Same principle, different era. Now listen carefully. This is important. Control is not silence forever. It is silence until clarity returns. You are not passive, you are selective. And selectivity is threatening to those who live by pressure. This is why toxic people feel uneasy around calm individuals. They cannot rush them, they cannot hook them, they cannot predict them, and what cannot be predicted cannot be dominated. Before we move to part 2, lock this in. Anger is loud, control is quiet. Anger feels strong, control changes outcomes. Marcus Aurelius did not rule by emotion, he ruled by mastery of the inner world. In the next part, we will go deeper. Silence itself is not weakness. Silence, when chosen, becomes strategic power. Stay with me. If this part made you reflect, like this video so more people learn to protect their peace. Subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic training that actually works in real life. And comment one word below. Steady. If you are choosing control over reaction, type steady and prepare for part 2. Part 2, silence is not weakness, it is strategic power. Silence has a bad reputation. People confuse it with fear, avoidance, or weakness. But silence, when chosen, is not the absence of strength. It is the presence of control. Pause with me for a moment. Take one slow breath and say it quietly. Silence is a position. Say it again. Silence is a position. Toxic people understand one thing very well. Noise creates leverage. Words create hooks. The more you speak, the more material you give them to twist, reinterpret, and weaponize. This is why silence unsettles them, because silence removes raw material. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He ruled an empire where every word could be turned into rumor, every reaction into scandal. And yet he trained himself to speak less, not because he had nothing to say, but because he knew when words stopped serving truth. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Silence in Stoicism is not retreat, it is alignment. When you stop speaking unnecessarily, you stop leaking intention. Toxic people rely on emotional transparency. They need to see what you feel to know how to push you. Silence breaks that feedback loop. Behavioral studies show that in negotiations, the person who speaks less is often perceived as holding more power, even when their actual authority is equal. Why? Because humans fear uncertainty more than confrontation. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty shifts control. Think about a common scenario. Someone provokes you with a comment designed to pull you into defense. They want explanation. They want justification. They want you to narrate your inner world so they can enter it. When you respond with silence, something strange happens. The tension reverses. They start filling the gap. They over-explain. They reveal motive. You stay still. Say this with me. Silence lets others expose themselves. Again, silence lets others expose themselves. Marcus practiced this not as manipulation, but as discipline. He knew that every unnecessary word risked giving power away. This is why Stoics value restraint in speech. Epictetus advised, "Be silent for the most part, or speak merely what is necessary." Necessary is the key word. Silence is not refusing to speak forever. Silence is refusing to speak when speech serves ego, not principle. Now pause, breathe again. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, it wasn't because of the topic. It was because of emotional overinvestment. Silence protects energy. Toxic people drain energy because they feed on reaction. Remove reaction, and they starve. Data from conflict resolution psychology shows that disengagement from verbal escalation reduces repeat provocation over time. Not immediately, but consistently. Toxic people test boundaries like pressure systems. If silence holds, they move on. If silence cracks, they return. Here is the second silent behavior. You speak only when your words cannot be twisted. This means shorter sentences, neutral tone, no emotional framing, facts over feelings. Not because feelings don't matter, but because not everyone deserves access to them. Marcus did not publish his meditations. They were private. That tells you something. Stoic strength is inward. Now a practical exercise. For the next week, reduce your responses by half, not your presence, your words. If you normally explain, state. If you normally argue, observe. If you normally react, pause. Each time you choose silence, notice the shift in the other person. Confusion, discomfort, retreat. Silence changes dynamics because it removes the game board. Toxic people cannot play without pieces. Here is the paradox. Silence feels passive, but it requires strength. It requires resisting the urge to correct, defend, and prove. Neuroscience confirms that resisting immediate response strengthens impulse control circuits in the brain. You are not just managing relationships, you are training your nervous system. Marcus Aurelius believed that the true citadel is the mind. Silence is one of its walls. Before we move to part 3, lock this idea in. Silence is not weakness, it is selection. You choose when to engage, and that choice shifts power. In the next part, we will talk about boundaries without words. How to set limits so cleanly that explanations become unnecessary. Stay with me. If this part helped you see silence differently, like the video so others can reclaim their energy. Subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic tools that work beyond motivation, and comment one word below. Still. If you are learning to stand firm without noise, type still and get ready for part 3. Part 3, boundaries without words. Most people think boundaries are something you explain, something you announce, something you justify. But the moment you explain a boundary to a toxic person, it stops being a boundary and becomes a negotiation. Pause here for a breath and say this quietly. A boundary is not a speech. Say it again. A boundary is not a speech. Toxic people don't respect boundaries they understand. They respect boundaries they cannot move. And words are always movable. Marcus Aurelius knew this in a world where power was tested constantly. He didn't draw lines with declarations. He drew them with behavior. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." A boundary without action is philosophy. A boundary with action is law. Toxic people study patterns. They learn how far they can push, how long you tolerate, how much you explain before you break. When you keep explaining, you teach them where the edge is. When you stop explaining and change behavior, the edge disappears. Pause again. Breathe. If someone keeps crossing your limits, it's rarely because they don't understand. It's because nothing happens when they do. This is the third silent behavior. You enforce boundaries through consistency, not conversation. Think of a common situation. A coworker repeatedly disrespects your time. They show up late, interrupt, dump urgency on you. You explain how busy you are. You explain how it makes you feel. Nothing changes. Then one day, you stop waiting. You start meetings on time. You end conversations when they go off track. You leave when respect drops. No announcement, no warning, just action. What happens next is predictable. Confusion, then adjustment. Behavioral research shows that people adapt faster to change consequences than to repeated explanations. Boundaries enforced through action retrain behavior. Boundaries enforced through words invite debate. Say this with me. Action teaches faster than explanation. Again, action teaches faster than explanation. Marcus Aurelius understood that dignity is not defended verbally. It is demonstrated. He did not argue with chaos. He reorganized his life around principle. Another scenario. A family member uses guilt to control you. Long messages, emotional pressure, silent expectations. You used to reply immediately. You used to reassure. You used to overfunction. Then you stop. You reply later, shorter. Neutral. You don't engage the guilt. You address only facts. The guilt loses oxygen. Toxic people rely on emotional engagement to maintain control. Remove engagement and the structure collapses. This does not mean you become cold. It means you become clear. Clarity is intimidating to those who depend on confusion. Here is the key Stoic distinction. Compassion does not require access. You can care without allowing interference. Marcus ruled millions without letting everyone into his inner world. That was not cruelty, that was wisdom. Pause here. Breathe slowly. If you feel resistance to this idea, notice it. Resistance often comes from fear of being disliked. Stoicism teaches that approval is outside your control. Principle is not. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In modern terms, be content to be misunderstood while you protect your integrity. Let's ground this with data. Studies on boundary setting in interpersonal psychology show that consistent behavioral boundaries reduce manipulation attempts over time by measurable margins, while verbal boundary setting alone often escalates pushback. Toxic people push hardest when they sense uncertainty. Silent boundaries remove uncertainty. Now a practical exercise. Identify one recurring violation in your life. Just one. Decide the action that will change your behavior, not theirs. Shorter replies. Fewer visits. Ending conversations earlier. Starting without waiting. Then implement it without explanation. Observe. You will feel discomfort. That discomfort is the old pattern dying. Marcus Aurelius believed discomfort was not an enemy. It was a signal of growth. Remember this. You don't need to convince toxic people to respect you. You need to stop placing yourself where disrespect is possible. Before we move to part 4, lock this in. Boundaries spoken invite testing. Boundaries lived end the test. In the next part, we will take this further. We will talk about becoming unavailable to chaos itself. When you are no longer accessible to drama, manipulation loses its grip. Stay with me. If this part gave you clarity, like the video so others learn to protect their time and energy. Subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic strategies that work quietly but powerfully. And comment one word below, firm. If you are choosing action over explanation, type firm and prepare for part 4. Part 4. Becoming unavailable to chaos. Chaos is addictive, not just for toxic people, but for anyone who has learned to confuse intensity with importance. Toxic people thrive in chaos because chaos gives them constant access. Access to your attention, access to your emotions, access to your time. Pause with me here. Take one slow breath and say this quietly. Chaos only survives where it has access. Say it again. Chaos only survives where it has access. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world of permanent chaos. Wars at the borders, plagues in the cities, political intrigue inside the palace. Yet when you read his words, you don't hear panic. You hear order. Why? Because Marcus learned to make chaos irrelevant to his inner life. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This was not escapism. It was strategy. The fourth silent behavior is this. You become unavailable to chaos, not by fighting it, not by condemning it, but by refusing to meet it where it lives. Toxic people often mistake availability for obligation. They believe that if they create urgency, you must respond. If they raise their voice, you must engage. If they create drama, you must explain. When you don't, something breaks in their pattern. Let's slow this down. Breathe. Think of the last time someone tried to pull you into emotional disorder. Late-night messages, raised voices, vague accusations. These are not communication attempts. They are access attempts, and access is optional. Becoming unavailable does not mean disappearing. It means choosing the conditions under which you engage. You respond to clarity, not noise. You respond to facts, not emotional storms. Research in emotional regulation shows that refusing to engage during heightened emotional states reduces conflict escalation significantly over time. Toxic people escalate because escalation has worked before. When escalation stops working, they adapt or they leave. Marcus did not try to calm the mob by shouting louder. He reorganized the system. You do the same in your life. Here is a common example. A coworker thrives on urgency. Everything is now. Everything is a crisis. You used to jump. You used to fix. You used to absorb their stress. Then you change one thing. You stop responding during emotional peaks. You wait. You respond later, calmly, addressing only the concrete issue. No commentary on tone. No defense. Over time, the crises shrink because chaos without audience collapses. Say this with me. I do not attend emotional emergencies. Again, I do not attend emotional emergencies. This does not make you uncaring. It makes you selective. Selection is power. Marcus understood that attention is finite. He guarded his. You must guard yours. Another scenario. Family drama, group messages, passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. The pull to explain yourself is strong, but explanation feeds chaos. Instead, you stay factual, short replies, or no reply at all when nothing constructive is possible. At first, resistance increases. This is called an extinction burst in behavioral psychology. When a pattern stops working, the behavior intensifies briefly. Many people quit here. Stoicism teaches you to hold steady. Marcus wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." You are not the wave, you are the cliff. Now pause. Breathe again. If you feel guilt when you imagine being unavailable, notice it. Guilt is often the residue of past conditioning. Toxic systems train you to feel responsible for their instability. But responsibility without authority is bondage. Becoming unavailable is reclaiming authority over your inner space. Let's ground this with numbers. Studies on burnout show that constant emotional availability is a primary predictor of exhaustion and resentment. Reducing emotional availability, even slightly, improves mental resilience and decision quality. This is not theory. This is survival. Here is a practical exercise. Choose one daily window where you are unreachable. No explanations, no apologies, just structure. During this time, you respond to nothing chaotic. Observe what happens. Anxiety rises, then falls. The world does not end. Your clarity returns. Marcus Aurelius did not wait for peace to arrive. He created it internally and acted from there. Remember this before we move on. You don't defeat chaos by managing it. You defeat it by making it irrelevant. In the next part, we will talk about letting results speak louder than defense. When you stop explaining yourself and start letting outcomes speak, toxic people lose their final weapon. Stay with me. If this part helped you see chaos differently, like the video so others learn to protect their mental space. Subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic Discipline that creates calm authority. And comment one word below, clear. If you are choosing order over noise, type clear and prepare for part 5. Part 5. Letting results speak louder than defense. Defending yourself feels natural. When someone questions your motives, your character, or your competence, the instinct is to explain, to justify, to correct the record. But here is the uncomfortable truth. The more you defend yourself, the more you confirm that the accusation matters. Pause with me for a breath and say this quietly. Defense gives accusations oxygen. Say it again. Defense gives accusations oxygen. Toxic people understand this instinctively. They provoke not to learn the truth, but to pull you into self-explanation. Explanation creates engagement. Engagement creates leverage. Marcus Aurelius refused this trap. He lived under constant scrutiny. Rumors followed him. Decisions were criticized. Motives were questioned. Yet in his private writings, he never obsessed over reputation. He focused on results. He wrote, "Never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." This insight is lethal to manipulation. Toxic people weaponize doubt. They don't need to prove anything. They only need you to start proving yourself. When you do, you hand them the frame. Let's slow down. Breathe. Think of a time you explained yourself to someone who had already decided not to understand. How did it end? More questions, more doubt, more exhaustion. Defense rarely resolves anything with toxic people because resolution is not their goal. Control is. This is the fifth silent behavior. You stop defending yourself. You let outcomes speak, not loudly, not dramatically, consistently. Results are slow, but they are undeniable. Behavioral psychology shows that credibility is built more by repeated observable behavior than by verbal claims. People trust patterns, not explanations. Toxic people fear this because results remove debate. You can argue with words, you cannot argue with reality. Say this with me. Patterns beat arguments. Again, patterns beat arguments. Marcus understood this deeply. He did not chase approval. He acted according to principle and let time reveal the truth. Time is a Stoic ally. Toxic people hate time because time exposes inconsistency. Here is a practical example. In a workplace, someone subtly undermines you. They question your competence indirectly. You could defend yourself in meetings. You could clarify intentions. Or you could deliver consistently. Meet deadlines. Solve problems. Remain calm. Over time, your reliability becomes visible. Their words lose weight. Studies in organizational behavior show that individuals who respond to criticism with performance rather than argument gain higher long-term trust ratings, even if initial impressions are mixed. This is not passivity. It is patience weaponized. Another scenario. In relationships, someone accuses you of not caring enough, not doing enough, not being enough. You explain your efforts. You list sacrifices. Nothing changes. Then you stop explaining. You show care through consistent action where it aligns with your values. Where it doesn't, you don't compensate. The accusations lose traction because reality no longer supports them. Pause again. Breathe slowly. If this feels risky, that's because it is. Letting results speak requires confidence in your direction. Marcus Aurelius warned against seeking validation externally. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Toxic people exploit that estimate. When you stop estimating their opinions as important, their influence collapses. Let's add numbers. Research on self-justification shows that people who frequently justify their actions are perceived as less confident and less authoritative, even when their actions are correct. Silence plus results reverses this perception. Authority grows quietly. Here is your exercise. Identify one area where you habitually defend yourself. Decide one measurable action that proves your position instead. Then stop explaining. Let the action repeat. Let time work. The discomfort you feel is the old need for approval withdrawing. Marcus would recognize it. Before we move to part 6, lock this in. You do not owe explanations to those who profit from misunderstanding you. You owe integrity to yourself. In the next part, we will dismantle the final illusion, why revenge feels powerful but keeps you weak, and how Stoicism frees you from that trap entirely. Stay with me. If this part shifted how you see criticism, like the video so others learn to reclaim quiet authority. Subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic discipline that compounds over time. And comment one word below, proof. If you are choosing results over defense, type proof and get ready for part 6. Part 6, why revenge keeps you weak. Revenge feels powerful. It feels justified. It feels like balance being restored. But revenge has a hidden cost that toxic people understand very well. It keeps you connected. Pause with me for a breath and say this quietly. What I focus on, I feed. Say it again. What I focus on, I feed. Toxic people do not fear your anger. They do not fear your words. And they do not even fear your boundaries once they are set. What they fear most is being forgotten emotionally. Revenge prevents that. Marcus Aurelius warned against this illusion clearly. He wrote, "The best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer." Revenge makes you orbit the very thing you want to escape. It feels like strength, but it is dependency in disguise. Let's slow this down. Breathe. Think of a time you replayed an argument in your mind, imagining what you should have said, what you wish they would feel. That loop is not closure. It is captivity. Neuroscience shows that rumination activates the same stress pathways as direct conflict. Your body does not know the difference between a real fight and a mental one. Toxic people benefit when you keep fighting them internally. They still occupy space. This is the 6th silent behavior. You stop seeking emotional repayment. No justice fantasies. No imagined apologies. No desire to see regret. You choose freedom instead. Marcus Aurelius lived among betrayal. Some of those closest to him conspired against his rule. Yet he did not waste energy wishing punishment. He focused on alignment with his own values. When you wake up in the morning, he wrote, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. Notice this. He prepared for harm, but he did not plan revenge. Preparation builds resilience. Revenge drains it. Say this with me. Revenge ties me to the past. Again. Revenge ties me to the past. Toxic people love when you want revenge. It means they still matter. It means your peace is still negotiable. When you stop wanting them to feel anything, the bond breaks. This is why indifference is often mistaken for cruelty. It is not cruelty, it is release. Here is a real-world example. Someone disrespected you publicly. The urge to expose them is strong, to correct the narrative, to regain status. But exposure keeps the story alive. Silence plus forward motion ends it. Studies on social conflict show that public retaliation often escalates reputational damage for both parties, while disengagement followed by visible progress reduces long-term harm. Time sides with movement. Another scenario. A personal relationship ends badly. You want them to regret losing you, so you imagine success as proof. But success motivated by revenge still centers them. Stoicism offers a cleaner path. You succeed because it aligns with who you are becoming, not because someone is watching. Marcus understood this distinction, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do. That is freedom. Pause again. Breathe slowly. If letting go of revenge feels like losing power, notice that feeling. It is the last hook. Power that depends on someone else's pain is not power. It is permission. When you withdraw that permission, you reclaim yourself. Let's ground this with data. Psychological studies on forgiveness and disengagement show reduced cortisol levels and improved cognitive clarity when individuals release revenge-oriented thinking. This is not moral advice. This is neurological hygiene. Here is your exercise. Write down the name of one person you still want to win against. Now write this sentence beneath it. I release the need for them to feel anything. Then close the page. You don't need to forgive them. You need to free yourself. Marcus Aurelius did not chase enemies. He outgrew them. Before we move to the final part, lock this in. Revenge keeps you tied. Indifference sets you free. In the last part, we will complete the path. The Stoic exit, choosing freedom over victory and walking away with authority intact. Stay with me. If this part helped you loosen an old grip, like the video so others can reclaim their mental space, subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic clarity that cuts clean, and comment one word below, free. If you are choosing freedom over revenge, type free and prepare for the final part. Part 7, the Stoic exit, freedom over victory. Most people think the goal is to win, to prove a point, to be seen as right. But Stoicism was never about winning arguments. It was about winning yourself back. Pause with me here. Take one slow breath and say this quietly. I don't need victory to be free. Say it again. I don't need victory to be free. Toxic people thrive on unfinished emotional business. They want you angry, defensive, explaining, or hoping for closure. Any of those keeps the door open. The Stoic exit closes the door without slamming it. Marcus Aurelius understood that the cleanest exit leaves no echo. He wrote, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do. This is the final silent behavior. You leave without needing agreement. You leave without needing regret. You leave without needing to be understood. That is freedom. Let's slow this moment down. Breathe. Many people stay trapped not because they can't leave physically, but because they are waiting for a psychological permission slip, an apology, an admission, a sign that the other person finally sees the truth. Toxic people rarely give this, and even when they do, it's often another hook. The Stoic does not wait for permission. The Stoic exits internally first. Marcus did not resign his position when surrounded by corruption. He withdrew his emotional dependence. He continued to act with integrity while no longer needing validation. That is the Stoic exit. You do not disappear. You do not announce your departure. You simply stop investing where returns are toxic. Say this with me. I withdraw my energy before I withdraw my presence. Again, I withdraw my energy before I withdraw my presence. This is why toxic people fear this stage more than any boundary. Anger they can provoke, silence they can test, boundaries they can push, But indifference combined with forward motion ends the game. Behavioral psychology calls this disengagement with redirection. When attention is removed and replaced with purpose, old patterns collapse. Toxic people lose relevance not because you punish them, but because you outgrow the system that needed them. Think of a final scenario. Someone expects a reaction from you, a confrontation, a message, a showdown. Instead, you don't show up emotionally. You show up to your life. Your work improves, your routines stabilize, your nervous system calms. Over time, they stop coming, not because they changed, but because the door no longer opens. Marcus Aurelius believed that a person's worth is measured by what they give their attention to. Attention is life energy. Where you place it determines who you become. This is the completion of all 7 behaviors: control over reaction, silence as power, boundaries through action, unavailability to chaos, results over defense, freedom over revenge, and finally the Stoic exit, choosing peace without spectacle. Before we close, pause one last time. Breathe deeply. If you've followed this entire series, notice the shift. You are no longer thinking about how to handle toxic people. You are thinking about how to live well regardless of them. That is the Stoic transformation. Marcus Aurelius did not defeat every enemy, but he died with his inner citadel intact. That is victory by Stoic definition. Remember this. You don't need to win to walk away whole. You don't need closure to move forward. You don't need their understanding to choose yourself. This is the Stoic exit. Quiet, clean, final. If this series helped you reclaim your inner authority, like this video so more people stop living inside toxic dynamics. Subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic Philosophy applied to real life. And now comment one word below. Exit. If you are choosing freedom over victory, type exit and close the door with calm authority. Before you scroll away, pause. This part matters. If this video made you realize why toxic people lose power around calm minds, that's not coincidence. That's awareness returning. Stoics didn't win by domination. They won by self-command. Every time you stay silent instead of reacting, you reclaim ground. Most people try to look strong. Stoics become unshakable. And once toxic people sense that they can't pull reactions from you anymore, they stop trying. Silence becomes your boundary. Calm becomes your authority. If you're ready to build that kind of inner strength, like this video so more people stop feeding toxic dynamics, subscribe to Making Life Better for Stoic tools you can actually use. And now comment one word, calm. If you're choosing discipline over reaction, type calm and commit.